Welcome to the Endurance Studio podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Turner. I'm an avid ultra-endurance cyclist, bikepacker, and runner, and I'm on a journey to learn and share everything I can about how people can push beyond their limits. This podcast will explore all aspects of endurance through conversations with people I find unique and interesting. There's always an amazing story of accomplishment and failure, and always something to learn. I run this podcast from an off-grid mobile studio I've created so I can travel to the guests and have authentic, in-person conversations because I believe in the importance and power of face-to-face conversations. Thank you for watching and listening. This episode is brought to you by Squirrel's Nut Butter. Who doesn't need a little extra lube in their life? They make adventure lube. It's the best in the business. I use the saddle butter for riding and the anti-chafe for ultra running. It's all natural ingredients, sustainable packaging, and it's locally manufactured here in Flagstaff, Arizona. And go check out episode number 4 with Chris Thornley. He's the owner and operator of Squirrel's Nut Butter. He's an amazing human, and he's got some really great stories on that podcast. So check him out. You can use my unique promo code, Endurance15, for 15% off any of their products online at squirrelsnutbutter.com, or you can click the link in the description and it will automatically be applied to your shopping cart. So please use that code. Go buy from them. Let them know that their support of this podcast is paying off for them, and spread that lube love. squirrelsnutbutter.com. This episode is brought to you by Embark Good Energy. If y'all have been following me for a while, you'll know that I have a thing for maple syrup, and I'm stoked to announce that I am now an ambassador for Embark Good Energy. They hail from the woods of Wisconsin's driftless region, and they make amazing organic maple syrup. So I love adding this, what I call rocket fuel, into my bikepacking race mix. There's 3 flavors: salted maple energy, coffee maple energy with 72 milligrams of green tea caffeine, that's my favorite, and elderberry, which can be taken straight up or mixed with water. One 3 fluid ounce pouch has a lab verified 320 calories and 80 grams of carbs. And it's not that garbage maple syrup with high fructose corn syrup. This is 100% organic, great tasting maple syrup. You can use directly from the pack for quick energy, mix it with water for a hydration aid, or use it in camp cooking and even cocktail mixes. They're convenient resealable pouches, so you can have multiple uses while consuming it and avoid sticky messes. So use my unique promo code to get 20% off today. The code is EMBARK20, EMBARK20, for any products online at embarkmaple.com. I just finished up the epic 2024 Colorado Trail Race, and today's guests finished first place male single speed and second place female. There are a couple people who I met on the Pinions and Pines 500, and I've really had an opportunity to bond on trail with both of them. They are absolutely incredible and inspirational bikepackers, and I'm just so excited that they're going to take some time to sit with me today, even though we're all a little wiped out, dehydrated, and sore, and do a little debrief from the race. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'd like to welcome to the podcast Matt Annabel and Karin Pocock. The people that comment on this podcast always comment about the hats.
Oh, no
Yeah.
shit.
It's like the biggest thing that people...
fuck yeah.
And they'll be like, that hat's gay. Or they'll be like, that hat's amazing. Where did you get that? It looks hand woven.
That's so.
And it's
Wow.
just like,
I'm very.
why does
into,
everybody care about the hats? Like,
We get to pimp our hats.
Hat culture is so good. No, I should have. No, we'd
It's
look
a-
weird though. We'd be like team hats,
Yeah.
representing for the region, the nonprofit of the region.
so we're rolling.
Okay.
We are recording.
Oh
Excellent.
God.
So let's get it started. Congratulations to both of you.
Thanks,
on your
brother.
finish.
Thanks.
You too.
First place single speed,
Yeah.
second place female. Incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was something. It
Yeah.
was, hard to come by those things.
Yeah. And Matt, your goal, I remember leading into this, was you were attempting to break the 5-day barrier.
Yeah.
So is that 5 full days of riding?
It would have been, coming in at before 4 a.m. Friday morning would have done it.
Okay.
I didn't quite make it, but I gave it a good shot. And I got I wouldn't even call it a consolation prize. It was like a better thing that Steven, I think you say his last name, Shirley.
Yeah.
And I got to race hard the whole last night. We used all the dark the last night for the single speed crown, and it was pretty close. And that'll be this amongst the little single speed family that there is, like that title is pretty coveted.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of my friends that are very worthy of it that haven't had the chance to like earn it yet, and I did this year, so that fills my heart more than the sub 5, and I'll come back next year and I'll smash the 5-day barrier, pretty sure.
Yeah, going the other direction.
I think well, there's so many things. Like, we got lucky with the weather again this year. The last 2 years the weather's been pretty good. Fast course. Without a fast course, I can't even really entertain that time goal, but I like, it's in me, I think, to go below that with a good fast year, and I think going east is faster for me. So that'll be, it's like got to have a great time this year. Didn't hit the goal, and now it's still there to chase. So what's bad about that?
Yeah. Yeah, the weather was so good.
Yeah.
Like, so literally I put my rain gear on once for like 30 minutes and got rained on maybe an hour one night.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was like, the one thing I've worried about for months leading into this was lightning and weather.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you were I was like riding with you.
Yeah.
You were like my acting tour guide for the first pass because I was so nervous. I was like, I'm going to stick with Karin because like she definitely knows what she's doing.
And normally we go over those passes with fear in our heart, or we get stopped.
Yeah.
Like, it was so odd to be up on like Coney Cataract in pleasant, sunny midday weather.
Yeah.
And like, oh, it's so nice up here. I've never been up here either in the daylight or without fear in my heart. It's always like darkness or terror and darkness. So it was pretty special to cross the 10 mile with you, like feeling casual about lightning.
Yeah.
Maybe not about everything else, but about lightning.
The Georgia pass, the first pass,
Mm-hmm.
at night, I could see lightning off in the distance.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that was enough just to see. It was like 50 miles away.
Is it coming my way?
Yeah. I was like,
totally.
I better get down now.
Uh-huh.
Right. So what do you like? I see all these hikers up there, and there were a ton of through hikers, like really incredible, like tons of varying degrees of expertise in through hikers, you could tell. Right. And there's got to be people that get caught up there. Do they just like bail down somewhere safe when they can?
Some are just on like an interesting end of a statistics problem. Like, they just keep walking and hope for the best, which works, except I think of like a good friend of mine who's a rancher, and she's like, our cows get struck by lightning. So we're not always moving that much faster at like hiking pace. And you're just it's like faith-based lightning safety.
There's been a shift, and I mean, not a lightning scientist or whatever. I just read an article recently, but there's been a shift in what they say you should do in certain lightning situations, and rather than staying still or hunkering down in an unsafe place, you should spend that time moving to a safer place is the main thing of it. So if you're on a ridgeline and there's lightning in the area, don't hunker down on the ridgeline or anywhere near it. Like, go down somewhere that's safer or less lightning prone is the big thing. Another thing is a bit of a myth is lightning isn't attracted to our bikes. Like, it doesn't want our bikes. It's not seeking our bikes. It flows really freely through metal things, but it's not like our bikes are an extra
conductor.
Yeah. So it's not like you got to drop your bike and run away from it. Right. If the faster thing is to get on your bike and ride it away from the lightning, then do that.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
God, I'm so glad I wasn't in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard though when you're sitting there trying to be safe and some through hikers just marching their ass up over the pass, and you're in this social pressure conundrum of like, well, that idiot's trying to die, so maybe I should too. Like I think it's really hard to stay paused at tree line on the race.
Yeah. I feel like people are asking me, did you enjoy it? Nobody's asked me if I would do it again yet. Thank God. They haven't asked me that.
I was going to
ask you. Are you going to do it again?
Because I feel so like the whole weather thing, I just feel so lucky that I'm not going to be able to do that again. It was so like once in a one-off. Like I really feel that way.
Yeah.
I barely had to bust out my rain gear. It's like, how many years do you say that, you know?
Yeah.
But it was localized. I was only 10 miles away from a couple people over by Fusus maybe. Mm-hmm. And they just were like, it opened up on us.
Right.
And I was right near there and it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got really lucky day 1 and 2. The forecast was terrible and it ended up being awesome. Day 3, I think you got extra lucky. A lot of people took some form of a rain, or on Sergeant's Mesa. I don't know if you heard the stories, but several of the leaders got hit with inches, if not a foot of hail that was still in the trail the next day.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like weather issue free. It was situational on day 3 for the most part. But as things go, I mean, the San Juans, most of us that were in the 4, 5, 6 day finish range had so little weather stress up in that area, where usually you have so much weather stress, particularly when the race goes this direction and you're exhausted and finishing that way. And it's hard to control the timing of when you go over some of those stretches, but
yeah. So how do you both feel physically? Normal? Worse?
Yeah, like sort of standard CTR marshmallow swelling of limbs and, acne and fatigue. But overall, I would say this was one of the few runs in the CTR that surprised me with making me feel like I could pedal the whole last day. That's sort of like a life goal, to like come in feeling good.
Yeah.
And to be pedaling up Indian Trail Ridge, not just pushing my bike up it at night on that final 24-hour push, was like, this feels good.
You pedaled it?
I pedaled even some of the chunky rocks.
Jesus.
And that was like a win, like all timing or not getting in under the 6-day mark like I wanted to aside. Feeling like that at the end of 500 miles was like, okay, this is great.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But then coming in at 4 a.m., sleeping for like an hour and a half, and then waking up, that makes you feel less great. And
yeah.
So waiting for the fluid to pee its way back out of my legs. And then I'll feel great again. I'll get use of my big toes. So
yeah.
Standard stuff, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel, either of you feel worse or better when comparing to Arizona Trail Race after, like the come down after?
Do you want to answer?
For me, the AZT was just so different because I rode the whole thing with COVID. And I think at the end, it was such a relief to be done, but I'd already been pacing down. Mm-hmm. So my body was in a place of like, I wasn't as depleted because I was already on a self-care program for illness. Whereas on this, you get off it and you're like, whoa, I want to eat everything in this grocery store and then maybe sleep in the middle of the aisles and then keep eating. And that's just from being at that like more elevated place. So I feel the push of like the athleticism more. But I did sleep every night. I was off the bike for 5 hours a night this whole time. So I feel, better than some years.
Did you get cold at night in any of the?
I didn't. This is one of the warmest, happiest, most pleasant CTR experiences I've ever had.
Really?
Whoa.
Except for the night that it rained into my bivvy and my dream state belief that the water was in my mind until I woke up in a bathtub of water. And then
oh my God.
that night was not pleasant.
Squishy.
Oh. I froze my ass off.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it might have been, well, I'd be curious to hear where you slept, because there's strategic sleeping on the CTR for sure, with all the heat sinks and cold sinks and things like that.
Yeah. The first couple nights were great. The third night, where you're in the La Garita bypass.
Yeah.
right? And you pass like a giant reservoir off to the left, and then you kind of get into this like open ranch country kind of area.
It's cold.
And then my goal was to make it to the bikepackers resupply cathedral cabins. And I don't know, it was getting late. It was like 11 p.m. at that point, and I was just riding that long road, and I knew that there was that big climb to get up and over to get to cathedral. And I didn't really, I don't know, maybe I wasn't thinking clearly, but my thought process was that they're not going to be open. I didn't know that they were 24 hours, I guess. Or I didn't know it was going to be what it ended up being, where it was like very...
Right.
I think I would have pushed through if I knew what I know now about how cool they were, and that they would have definitely set me up with a place to sleep at any time in the night, right? I didn't think that was a possibility for whatever reason. So that like influenced my decision to just sleep in that kind of low land area. And I thought, this is kind of low. It's a lot lower in elevation. It's probably not going to be as cold. Yeah. It was so fucking cold.
Totally.
Yeah. I think it was like low 30s.
Yep.
So probably the warmest place close to where you were would have been to go up Los Pinos Pass, and somewhere on the pass probably would have been substantially warmer.
So why is that? Why is it warmer in the passes than that lowlands?
Cold air settles.
Yeah.
And that's a big settling area for the San Juans, really. There's dumping air down there in the night.
That's the opposite of what I thought I was doing. Like that of like the logic for me. I was not thinking clearly, I guess, or I didn't really think that through ahead of time. But I thought, this would be fine. But it wasn't. It was cold.
It's a balance, and it's like little microclimates everywhere, so it's hard to predict. But like, there's this. So another factor is as you go up, it's something like 5 degrees per 1,000 feet you ascend. You lose 5 degrees of Fahrenheit of warmth. And so sort of finding the happy medium between climbing out of the cold sink and not going up into the frozen tundra is like, so I don't know. Sometimes you can't help it. Like, I slept my third night at the top of Tank 7 Creek, which is like the highest point around there. But if I'd gone down either side, I was going into creek valleys that were colder.
Right.
So it didn't really matter that much. It would have been a 2 or 3 degree difference, and I would have had to be lucky to find that. So, but other places you can sort of game it. Like it probably would have made a difference if you went up Los Pinos ways.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like nesting in, like when we drove down to the Arizona border this year for the 300, Tim McCabe, who drove us down, was talking about how when you see like little snake curled up area, it's called a snake puddle, like the little flat spot they make. If you can find the cow puddle, that's where you want to sleep, because they're going to find this like nice, warm, dry, sheltered tree nook and then like smooth it out with their butts.
The cows.
The cows.
Yeah.
And so like in Sargent's or the Los Pinos area, which is all ranch country, like if you could find that kind of smashed in cow spot, that's usually like dry, warm, flat, might have some poop.
Yeah.
But those are great.
That's a great idea.
Like I've been hunting cow puddles ever since. Decided they're called cow puddles. They can be snake puddles.
That reminds me on the 800, I think two years ago when
last fall for us anyway.
Yeah. Oh, it was last fall. Yeah, right. Oh, right. I did the 800 2 years prior and the 300 with you two when you two did the 800. I remember 2 years ago when I attempted the 800, that whole first bit, the grass was so bad and there were these big openings, and it reminds me of the cow puddles. There were these big, like nice openings in the grass, but they were ant piles. They were like giant ant piles. So there was like no good place to sleep.
Right.
You could put up there, or you could just like lay in the grass. That was like, I don't know, extra mentally stressful for some reason on that one. But
there's all the bitey, stingy things to worry about there.
Dude, everything there wants to kill you. That's what's nice about here was like there's not a lot that just like wants to pop holes in everything and kill you and bite you. I mean, the mosquitoes were like, I got a couple mosquito bites.
Oh yeah, I didn't even feel any, I don't think.
And that was about it.
Huh.
Nice.
But for the most part, like the terrain was easier than than the Arizona Trail. The cat claw on the Arizona Trail is something else.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'd agree. Like the terrain of the CTR is easier than the Arizona Trail race for sure. And more forgiving. I think what sets the CTR, what makes it special is the thing we didn't get in huge doses this year. And that's what we were talking about earlier is the weather threat and the terror that comes with that. And so lacking that, it's like a little bit of a different thing. And I would totally tell you should come back and do it on a year where we all get terrorized, because that's like where it really cracks you open and makes you consider a lot of other, mortality thoughts and all that existential.
Yeah. I don't know. I need to process everything.
Yeah.
still, You know what I mean? Like it's still
a really hard thing. Any year. I don't want to minimize and I apologize if what I just said did for you or anybody else, but it's hard in any year. But we were minus 20% of the CTR experience this year.
Yeah, totally. I get it. I think, I've already thought about what I would do differently. Right. And the mistakes I made. One of them was my chain ring size.
Oh, yeah.
I had a 32 tooth chain ring. And when I rode with Greg on the last 30 hours, he had a 28 tooth chain ring, and he was just spinning it out, and and able to, and I blew my legs out like the first 2 days with that 32 tooth chain ring. And so I would go down to 30 or 28. What were you running?
I was running a 32 as well, because I remember being like, Dylan's the only other idiot who put a 32 on his, because I don't know what I was thinking, but I 32 ovaled it, and normally I'd run the 30 with the 50 in the back. And feel like you could spin. And I think you can spin the 32, but the level of fitness you need to have to do it is not what I came into the race with.
Totally. So. The fourth day I was like, this isn't happening. And then I had, and then that led to the second part, which was my shoes. And what I experienced there was significant foot pain from hiking, to the point where I was just trying to so when I would stand up and kind of crank on it, I would get significant foot pain because I was wearing SPDs. I went back and forth on this beforehand. I was going to do flats, and then I started to get numbness when I was testing my flats out, like numbness in my left foot. And so I was kind of under the mindset like, well, let's not gamble too much on that, and let's just go with something I know works and that I've spent a lot of time in.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know there's going to be hiking, but I've hiked a lot in this before.
Yep.
So let's do that. But the hiking was not even close to what I've done before. There was so much more. It was so much more so then I started getting this like horrible foot pain, and it really came to a head on Sargent's, I think, area.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, also, I tried no chamois. This was the first real no chamois test.
Yeah.
And I brought 2 things of squirrel's nut butter, and when I went to open one of them up, because I refill them from the big containers, I went to open one of them up, and I went to go poke through it and scoop some out, and I realized that it had just melted upside down, and it just had a thin layer. So it looked like it was full,
there was nothing.
but there was nothing in it. It just punched right through.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that's going to be a problem. I had one other container, but I needed to start rationing at that point. And this was part of the way into the first day that I realized this. And then I was like, okay, well, I better stand up and pedal more then.
Yeah.
Because to try and save my ass until I can get to BV, where I know I could pick up more squirrels.
Oh gosh.
So I was doing a lot more standing and pedaling, which was putting a lot more pressure on my feet than I don't know. And then the hiking on top of that. And then that all kind of came to a head on Sargent's Mesa, where I basically couldn't, every time I walked, the pain was so intense.
Oh man.
And when I was sleeping, it was just my feet were pulsing.
That's not good.
Yeah. And I'm like, I gotta figure out something else here. So it was like, what are the options?
Yeah.
Get to a bike shop somewhere and maybe switch out and do flats, just buy flat shoes if they have the size.
Yeah.
And then finally in desperation, I moved my cleats back. I just jammed them all the way to the back. as far back to like the thickest part of my foot as possible, thinking that would change.
Yeah.
And it did. It was like night and day difference. Like
awesome.
So
it alleviated all the pressure like off the balls of my feet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
So I would 100% do flats next time.
Oh, yeah.
And I would wear like run like ultras or something like that, probably.
Yeah.
Like a hiking type distance cushy shoe if I were to do it again.
I have in my left foot, and I get it to some degree in my right foot if I wear even cycling. So I wear flats like across the board anymore when I do any kind of long distance cycling. But within that, I've experimented with like cycling flats and straight up hiking shoes. And I have to wear hiking shoes. I give up the stiffness of the cycling shoes, the sole, just for the comfort and the room that it affords in the forefoot, because anything that squeezes my forefoot causes, that neuroma type pain. And I know a lot of people deal with that, especially like aging people. And so I don't know. I like anybody that's got some foot pain and doing particularly these types of races, I would like experiment with, don't just limit yourself to cycling shoes, like try some of the hikers too. And because it might get you to the finish line, or it might just make it a lot happier time out there.
Yeah, you go on flats?
I'm on flats, and I'm in a Ride Concept like shoe, like a cycling shoe.
Yeah.
But only because it supports. I have a surgical orthotic in there, so I've probably got a more built out set of footwear than a lot of people out riding bikes. But it makes a huge difference having had foot surgeries and having a bunch of cold injury and just life damage in my feet. Like I can pretty much pedal pain free in my feet, but a lot has gone into like a LiDAR scan of my foot that an orthotic gets built off of. So, but I think like it's, your feet are they're your contact point to the world and everything. So if you can keep them comfy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about riding a clipless shoe to know how much I'm losing not riding one, but it seems like for something like this, the flats are right up there in terms of pacing and competitiveness.
I feel like it gave me 0% advantage, significant disadvantage. Like I would have gone way faster those first couple of days. I was just like spun out in this, like, is this gonna ever end, this foot pain thing, or is this just gonna continue to get worse, and I know it slowed me down.
So in a race like this, the CTR or the AZTR, where there's so much hiking, another thing to consider in the math of that is like, they've done studies that clipless pedals are more efficient, clipless shoes with a stiff sole and you're locked in, they are more efficient for pedaling. But you think about how much hiking we're doing out there, and if there's anywhere that you're going to gain a huge amount of time, it's hiking faster. So if the shoes you're wearing are like a half a mile difference an hour, or even a quarter mile, that's hours faster that you're going to be. And on the pedaling side, like the loss wearing something that's not clipless or maybe even a hiking shoe is a lot less than what you could gain on the hiking side. And a race like this, gravel race is different, but this is not a gravel race.
Right. Just like that first, it was probably really good on that first big, long pavement bypass, gravel and pavement bypass.
And then that's it.
Yeah. I mean, and then after that, it was like, because I was good up to that point. It was after that I think it really caught up to me when we were hiking together.
On the 10 mile.
After that, it took a day and a half to 2 days to get back to like a comfortable spot with the feet, Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
And I also miscalculated my food pretty bad in 2 spots. I basically was rationing going into the cathedral cabins. I don't know why. The thing about like the resupply is you go from you're by yourself a lot. You're like in this state, sleep deprived, afraid, lonely, dark, intimidated, and then you get to resupply and it's like fucking chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like
Distraction.
people
Oh my God.
everywhere,
Yeah.
and there's distractions, and there's a lot of times other bike packers, and you're
Uh-huh.
talking with them, and you go from like these polar opposite
Uh-huh.
environments
Yeah.
within hours, right? And I was having a really hard time in the Silverton resupply.
Uh-huh.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know what it was. I caught up with Greg at that point, and there was like one restaurant open, one breakfast restaurant, and there's a bunch of like motorcycles there doing some sort of motorcycle event or something, and you know, people are asking you, and it's just it's difficult, and I feel like I'm like socially kind of it's like walking into a bar and everybody stops and stares at you. You know, they all turn around and stare at you. Like, that's how I feel when I'm in those places. I don't think that's what's really happening.
I get it.
But and I feel like I'm just like bumping into everybody, and I don't know what to order, and everything's very like confusing and overwhelming.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
And I think it may be overwhelming. The whole experience is overwhelming compared to what you were just doing.
We've had this conversation a
So,
lot.
I mean, this is like how I blew my pre-Searle Pass resupply was just everyone, you're the entertainment all of a sudden, and everyone wants to talk to you, and it's not that you don't want to talk to them, so you engage, and then you're like, oh geez, my addled brain that's had 4 hours of sleep doesn't know what I'm supposed to buy, and suddenly you're pedaling back out, and your bike feels like a refrigerator. You're like, how did I end up with too much food, which I can't throw anywhere because there's no trash, and it can hose you to like screw up resupply, whether it's too much or too little. Because I ended up in the same boat with the sergeant's piece as well. Coming into Cathedral, I didn't have nearly the food I needed, and food rationing for like the 8-hour black hole that is Sergeant's Mesa just depletes you to the point that the easy pedaling after is hard feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, the food's easy to screw up. Both. That
seems like that's a critical thing that the really good people have gotten down, that the elite people have gotten down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, that's true. I mean, the ones that have it dialed, I think one thing with any of these races is the first time you do any particular route, there's a lot of learning that has to happen. And so even the elite folks can botch it up. And I know Javier had, he ran out of food on the Cataract Ridge section. And, I don't know if he had nothing left or not much, but if you look at the replay, Justinus passed him in that stretch and was going so much faster, and it was because of kind of a botched resupply or not knowing. I think the issue I did hear from him, he was looking for Cathedral Ranch and didn't know where it was, and missed the opportunity to get food there. So it wasn't so much of a botched resupply as it was just like couldn't find the resupply and paid for it. But obviously he still did really amazing, ended up winning. So. Yeah. So there was some drama at the end, right? Wasn't there for the all the first place people? Or? There was not so much at the end. Like the thing that happened near Leadville.
The drama I meant from the top 5 guys. There was some stuff happening. Yeah. Yeah,
in terms of like the relegation stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to misstate any of it, but Justinus, who got to Durango first and rode an incredible ride. Unfortunately, like coming off, I think it was Kokomo Pass, the way that I heard it, it broke a wheel, and then hitchhiked from there into Leadville to get a new wheel, and then hitchhiked back. In a lot of the races, that's illegal. That is a legal thing to do within the race rules. In the CTR and the AZTR, it is not. You can't get in a car for any reason. You're allowed to continue with a broken thing, but you want to get it fixed. You have to take it yourself. Like you got to walk. Or
no motorized.
You can't get in a vehicle. Right. And so unfortunately, like that was a rules violation, and he was, relegated. So didn't get an official finishing time. Though he got to Durango first. And I mean, it was an incredible ride regardless.
Yeah.
So that moved Javier into first place. And there were some other minor things, and I don't know that they've been sorted out completely. There was Jesse Reeves accidentally rode through he rode through the Interlaken burn area from earlier this year that was technically closed, and there was a reroute that we were all supposed to take. What he did was harder and takes longer and more energy, but it wasn't like the official route, and it was illegal, to go through there. And so I don't know that they've decided what they're going to do with his finish or not. But also Jesse, like, incredible person, amazing ride, like, not to detract anything from that, but just when it comes down to like the official placements, I'm not sure. Like, I couldn't tell you what place I was exactly yet. I don't think either, but I don't care like either that much.
It's funny. Somebody asked me like a month ago. They asked me about because I was explaining to them what bikepacking was, and they had no idea, what it was all about. And they asked, if your bike broke, could you like buy a new bike? Is that allowed? Like, if your frame broke and you end up in a town, is it in the rule set? Is it okay to just like buy a brand new bike and keep going? And it opened up kind of like a little bit of a thought experiment on that. Yeah. But anyway, I started diving into all the rule sets of CTR, AZTR. And when I got onto the CTR page and like comprehensively read the rule set before the race, I saw these two rules that were kind of like odd to me, that were different than like Arizona Trail Race rules, or I thought that they were. And the one was the no motorized thing. I didn't know that's also the same in AZTR. You can't hitchhike.
I think the specific thing for the AZT is you can't get in a car unless it's for medical reasons.
Right.
Which is slightly different. I don't think the CTR even makes that. I think you're supposed to like die yourself to the way to the medical.
You crawl yourself to the thing you need, and then if you want to keep racing, you crawl yourself back. And if it was a broken bike, like, technically strap it to your back and start walking. Like, is the theory behind the essence of the rules, is just you and your stuff, and anything that would be equal opportunity. So like walking your ass to a business and entering it would be completely.
And we're talking about now, one thing we should say is like, we're winging it a little bit here. So anybody that's going to do any of these races should read the rules for that race, like, and know it. That's the takeaway. But
there's like all this. There's like there's a lot of people that aren't doing that, and my opinion on this is, you spend a lot of energy and resources on all the other aspects of these races. You have comprehensive timing sheets, and like, you don't just like show up and wing it. Like, especially the people that are at the tip of the spear on these things, they're dialed in, most of them. You can take an extra, and I'm, and this is not a criticism, but I just don't, it's not much of an excuse. Like, I didn't read it. Like, you did all this other stuff. Like,
different race, different rules.
Everybody knows that there's no unified rule system with bike pack racing, and it's all individualized.
And it's a huge point of honor. Like, it's really, those rules for each of the races grew out of like the little nascent thing that became that race, like the 3 or 4 people that did it in the early years. And I think we all should have respect for that. It's not like, there's this kind of general standard that's being formed over here for this set of races that seems like it's a good thing. Well, that's great for those races, but you got to go back, and I think we have to honor like the founders of the thing, and the people that made it. They made it that way for a reason, and maybe we don't love the reason or like the rule, but like, they made it that way, and they gave us this gift. So let's just do what they say.
I like that they're different. It makes them unique in their own way. Like, I understand that Tour Divide probably has that motorized transport, like you can get in a car and hitchhike, probably because there's so many logistics that goes into that sort of event. It's such a long thing that if you couldn't do that, it would compromise a lot of people's races. There's huge stretches that are hundreds of miles where there's no access to anything, so like, it makes sense that Tour Divide, you got a lot of people from out of the country flying in just for that race. So to have a wheel break there, and then that's it. that, you know, your thousands of dollars and all of your travel time off of work, you're just done.
Yeah.
You know.
Although, or you try and buy another, like I had full wheel destruction 2 years ago coming into Silverton on the CTR.
Oh, really?
And did everything in moving mobile command central with my InReach and my earbuds and my phone to find a wheel that had a close enough spec to throw on the bike.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, could I badly roll like reinflating every mile or so down Stony Pass, get my ass into Silverton and just physically find a wheel? Like, is it possible to have a wheel in Silverton? And Silverton was too small. But in theory, like a town Buena Vista size, you probably just go buy yourself a wheel and, you know, swap some things, swap your cassette and your rotor and keep going. But it is, I think it's an interesting one that we are doing this free, unsupported bike pack racing and then wanting the rules to be different on this thing that we elected to jump in the club of. Like, the rules are the rules that someone chose to lay out.
Yeah.
They're non-standard.
Yeah. Well, people are elite people, I guess. Like, if it was anybody else other than the elites, we wouldn't be like having this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and the media, the whole media support debate.
Yeah.
You know, that's been in going around the last few years. Like, we're only having those conversations because the people that are bringing up those problems, that are questioning the rules, are elite people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the elite sector of our sport is small. There aren't a lot of sponsored athletes like within bike pack racing. It's a really small percentage of people, and that really, they have a huge platform to like control or dictate in a way, not dictate, well, influence. They have a huge amount of influence over like what happens going forward with the sport. Like, what does this turn into? And is it anything resembling what the three of us fell in love with and why we do it as non-elites, you know?
Yeah.
Though, I don't know. I tell my friend Karin that she is elite amongst the women's field. But, you know, in terms of the people that are sponsored, like heavily sponsored, like, yeah, that's a fortunate thing. Don't argue over the rules, you know? Like, the rules aren't for you to bend. They're, you know, and it's okay. Like, something happened out there. It's okay to fail or like to get unlucky and get broken and get sent out of the race. That's okay. That happens to all of us. Like, it's not a reason to try to change the whole sport because something didn't go the way that you wanted to. So,
yeah. There just seems to culturally be an acceptance of just not accepting the rules, or like allowing yourself to be elevated above because of some other reasoning. Like woke culture kind of allows, this is the way I see it, woke culture will kind of allow like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting though, because and maybe this is, I'm newer to bike packing relative to folks who are super OG, but to me the rules are inspiring. And I think of like the movie that got made about the CTR, where you're watching like Hefe and Neil talk and like listening to folks talk about there just being basically 3 rules, like follow the whole trail, do it under your own power, and don't break laws. And you're like, that's the most inspiring thing ever, that someone just cut me loose on 527 miles to just live by those 3 rules. So I find it so fascinating that anyone wants to bend out of that, because that parameter for experience leads to these like amazing moments out there,
right,
where you're like, wow, I'm technically forcing myself to suffer because 3 simple rules got stated to me and I don't want to break them. Like, my own honor code doesn't want to break them, so I'm just gonna drag myself forward. Like,
yeah,
like I think it's such a gift that we get to dive into that with one another. So I hope like maybe to plug that crazy free watch it on YouTube video, but like I hope everyone watches that every year before they CTR.
I haven't seen it. I would love to see this.
There's words that Hefe says where you're just like, oh, that's it. Like that's the why. Like that's what I want to go find, the dark space in my mind. And
you got to watch that. You do, because it gives some sense. It was filmed in a year where you can see the weather and things like that, and with Hefe in particular, like you get Aaron Johnson who made the film. You can see the questions that he asked Hefe. You can see like in Hefe's eyes in the moment just go like the
sparkle.
It's magic. I can't get enough of that.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
I got to meet him. I haven't had a chance to meet him.
Yeah.
So
it's like, he has such wise words to say. I mean, I think that the way it affects the way I've always thought about the Colorado Trail, and the most powerful thing I've ever heard him say about it is that the Colorado Trail is a great teacher. And there's always been a strong lesson in each passage of the trail that I've had. And, he's totally right about that. And I think that's like the thing, like that's the reason to be out here. It's not, everybody can have their reason. Who am I to say? But like in terms of like life growth and growth as a human, coming out here for that reason is a really worthy thing. It's a special trail in that way.
Yeah. So the other rule that was kind of weird, to go back to the original setup on this, was that you can't do prearranged. Well, what is the rule? You can't like call ahead and have like set up a hotel in advance, or like
of the race.
Yeah. Or like have something set out or whatever for you. So that was kind of a different one, because I remember on like Arizona Trail, there's like the 8 yard where you can have the stuff. What is it?
Pizza.
The pizza, yeah.
Kelvin Pizza, yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a unique, like different rule set. That one didn't really, I don't know, both of those don't really vibe with me, because it doesn't, if you look at it from the self-supported ethos, everyone has the same access to those things.
Right.
So like the equality aspect is still there.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily agree with those two rules that are on the Colorado Trail.
Because I don't know the specifics of it. Which rule?
I think it's like you can't like enter into the CTR being like, I know I have a hotel in Buena Vista.
Right.
Like you can't, because then in theory with this ride you could hotel bike pack the whole thing. You could leave the kit.
Okay.
Like you need to, some chance has to still be existing. Like, is there going to be a hotel room when I roll into said place?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Versus like it's the 12th and you're booking all your logistics for your 13th start or whatever.
Right. So like what did when Lachlan Morton did it, do you know how he did it so quickly? Did he like hotel it up or?
No, he was moving. He was like on a no or very little sleep plan. He slept a little tiny bit, I think. But I'm not sure what he did for resupplies, to be honest. I mean, he was only out for 3 days, and the gaps that he was jumping were huge. So he probably only resupplied maybe twice or something like that. But I don't know.
Some of the times that these people put down are unreal. Like Time and Fish's time. I think he has the record northeastbound, right?
Durango
to
which
Denver.
one. Probably.
Yeah.
Is that right? I can't remember which direction he went in. Superhuman.
I think it was Durango to Denver.
Okay.
That he set the record in.
And you think about like Sargents or the 10 mile or Cataract, and you're like, oh, this person has their bike in the air and they're running or they're riding it all.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Insane. And then also when I was getting to the end at that last final push, I was like thinking about Andrew Stremke doing a yo-yo on it.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
going back.
What? You're just going to like turn around and go the other way? Like, this is next level stuff.
Yeah.
Because this pretty much got me to a point where I was like, I'm tired of pushing my bike.
I'm ready to be done.
I was like, done for a while, like ready to be done for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
long time. 4 months, at least the rest of the year, probably.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you ever think that's like the really important qualifier of a true bike pack race, though, is that at some point you sit down and you're like, make it stop. Just please make it end.
Like, is that the thing we're all trying to get to with these?
Like, as in, it hasn't quite like touched the space inside your mind until you hit that point. Like whether that means you need it to be like a long enough ride to get you there. Like some of us, I think, are really partial to 500 plus miles, or whether it's the accumulated scary prickly things of the desert or the weather, lightning, and altitude of the CTR. But like that moment where you sit down and start crying and want it to end, you're like, this is why we do this.
Yeah.
I'm stoked you got there, buddy. Cause like that's, I think of it this way. Like if I go home from one of these and I don't feel like there's a little bit of a new crack in me somewhere, I feel like I missed out a little. Cause that's like the way I think of it is the cracks are there to let the light in, like to let you see the things that maybe you haven't been able to see in real life. Maybe you need to address some of those things, or maybe they're like helpful, joyous things. But yeah, if you don't get to the point where it cracks you open, you miss that.
Yeah, so. It did. And then it definitely did crack me open. But here's the thing. So when I started to, let's see, when I finally, we started to stick, Greg and I started to stick together, and I really started to talk to him and got to know him. And I'd seen Greg on various places, and I kind of know his story, and I know that he has spina bifida.
Yeah.
And I rode with him a little bit at the very beginning, like the very, very, very beginning, before the sun even came up the first day. And then we were like pretty much the same pacing, and we kept like crossing each other's paths. And then that last day I caught back up with him, and we just started chatting, and, you know, basically 6-7 hours went by, and we had just, cause he's in video production as well. He does stuff in LA, and we started talking about kind of his journey and everything. And at that moment I was like, dude, I have zero right to complain about anything right now. Like, Greg being out here doing this is so fucking inspiring.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so incredible. And he like, and I was like, okay, I can't. And I think that was the crack that let a little bit of light in for me, was like, like, you can't complain, dude, at all. Like Greg has it's way harder for him to push his bike up, and he's out here fucking doing it to like prove something to himself or prove something to whoever, right? He's got his own reasons for doing it. And someday I want to talk to him about that. But that was really just, that was the moment for me where I was like, this is, I'm reflecting on my own feelings right now and thinking life isn't that bad.
Yeah.
You know, like,
and you got a little bit of brotherhood out there too, which is, that's another layer to these things. Karin and I met during my first CTR, and so many other friendships formed on this race, other races like that. That's like another gift of these things. And like, for me anyway, like way bigger reason to come back year after year than any result or even finishing. Yeah. It's like, who am I going to get to spend time with in a meaningful way out there?
Yeah, and it was incredible spending time with Greg, like getting to know him, and we definitely bonded. Like, I don't know if it was agua fria death mud bonding, but it was pretty close.
That was good, buddy. That's good.
I mean, it was it was like sleeping on Indian Ridge for 5 minutes at a time, laying in the rocks, thinking like we had convinced ourselves it was comfortable somehow.
Yeah.
Giant rock piles, right? I couldn't believe that shit.
Yeah.
Like
in the dark,
yeah. Pushing through. Cause the only reason why when we started riding together, I was like, what do you think about the idea of finishing this tonight?
Yeah.
Like, let's just do this. Like, I do not want to sleep on my shitty ass client's sleeping pad one more night. You know, I want to shower. And he's like, let's do it. And I wouldn't probably have the mental fortitude to push through the night if we hadn't kind of made that agreement together to do it together.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
I would have gotten to 1 o'clock in the morning and been like, I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
I'll just finish this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like what's the difference? But together I was like, all right, let's just do it, dude.
Yeah.
And you know how that dynamic begins to develop over time, where one person's in a low point and the other person kind of pulls them out of it, and then vice versa. Totally. And we had that back and forth many times where I like 1-2 o'clock in the morning, the sleep monster was getting me, and I was like, can I lay down for like an hour? And he's like, 5 minutes.
So good.
Just like, fine.
That's great.
That's fine. And then he kind of fell apart after the sun came up, because that shit took us way longer than we thought. I didn't know we had all those passes to go over.
Oh God. Yeah.
And then he's like, we just got to get through this. We have 3 passes. And then, because we're looking at, we're like every 5 minutes, we're like zooming in and out on the elevation profile on our Garmin.
Yeah.
And we're like 3 more passes. Then we'll get through this final pass. And then it's all single track to Durango.
Oh, no.
Which was not the case, right?
Right. Well, it is a single track. It's not.
But it's
a lot of
extra,
uphill and a downhill, like we say.
What, 4 hours or 5 hours or something?
From Kennebec Pass? Yeah.
Like you're just pushing your bike uphill in Junction Creek.
And that's when Greg fell apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on, dude, let's, that's when I pulled him out of it.
Yeah. That's hard.
Gave that back to him.
That's a really mental section, because I think it's 6,500 feet of descending and 2,500 of up. But at that point, the descending is rough, so it's beating you. And then the climb is just, what would you call it?
Unnecessary. It's a funny
unnecessary is right.
phenomenon of the CTR. I feel it in both directions, where this beautiful trail that in my head I see as like a mountain image, like I'm going up and then I'm going to get down the other side. It's so guarded by uphill on the downhill in both directions, whether that's hitting the Platte and then getting up and over Waterton on the way out, or whether it's hitting Kennebec, feeling like you're cruising downhill and then just having like 5 miles of soul crushing, never ending, like up and down before you get to the final down. And I think it really is where like the mental, like the grittiness of the racing comes in, where your body probably can still go up that hill just fine, but your mind is like, please don't make me do this. Like I've like given you all my blood. Like I don't have any more left.
Yeah.
And the trail's like, more.
Yeah.
Mass now. And that's where you see, I think, like this community really shine is like pulling themselves together and making it, like dragging your body to the end. Then if you can find a trail companion for it helps.
It was definitely like the last day and a half or 30 hours or whatever with Greg was like a hallucinogenic experience, I guess is the best term.
You used all the night. You used the whole night, which is we all 3 of us like did all that stuff in the dark.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's I don't know, that's a special thing too. Like how often in your life do you get to push that hard at something, So
yeah, I think the second kind of intense portion was the big long Alpine section.
Oh, Coney Summit and Cataract Ridge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Before Silverton, which I also ran out of food up there. That was the second point. And was like rationing a payday, eating like 3 nuts at a time. It was so miserable. And I was like hearing shit, like hearing like the wind was like whispering,
Yeah.
And I wasn't that sleep deprived. So I think it was just I was just exhausted and hungry. But I felt, and I don't know if the food thing was this or if it was the elevation, but I was getting this like just low level inability to keep moving. Right.
Yep.
And I thought I'd be being from Flagstaff. I thought I'd be like acclimated. Okay.
Oh.
And I'm still not sure if it was that or if it was just, I just wasn't eating enough,
Yeah.
And running out of food, you're just, I don't know. I felt like I was moving like a fucking zombie.
Yeah, it's hard up there. It's high, even from Flagstaff or people from Colorado. Like you're all day between 12 and 13,000 feet for 12 hours more.
And we don't give it enough credit. Like those of us who live in the state, we're kind of, I think, like desensitized. We're like, oh yeah, it's just, up high, like everything is.
Yeah.
But the single biggest thing that almost everyone said that I rode with on this ride and talked to afterwards was like how the altitude affected them. And I think like it's affecting us too. The ones who think it's not, we're like, oh, we're locals, it doesn't really affect us. I think we're all taking like a cellular smackdown that's to a much greater proportion than we think. And we don't give it enough credit. Like the big difference of the Colorado Trail Race is like your body is operating in this like lacking oxygen space for a really long time. And we're all trying to push just as hard as we push at sea level. So I'm sure you were out of calories, out of electrolytes, out of everything. I know I was. Like I cratered so hard at the end of Cataract. It was just like, just push the bike. Keep going. Silverton has food.
Yeah. So was that like your low point, or what was your biggest low point?
Well, the bathtub experience inside my bivvies. I would say there were two, and they kind of mimic yours a little bit. The end of Cataract, I had something happen that it didn't feel like bonking. I've bonked plenty, and usually once I get salt or water or sugar or something in, I feel good. It felt like I was in organ failure. I was actually up there being like, have I just lost a kidney or part of my liver irrevocably? Like it was like I've been septic before, and it reminded me of the wall you hit with blood poisoning, where you're like, things aren't working no matter what I do. And it scared the heck out of me because I didn't have a way to fix it, but it was still physiological. For me, the low point was in Junction Creek on that 5-mile uphill. I had that moment that to me, like, that is the light. It's the light coming in the cracks. It's the growth place. And it was the moment of, I don't like this anymore, and I can't hold a good mental state about it. And where you're like, I want to be angry, and I don't really like anger as an emotion in life. And you're sitting there in this self-created experience being like, I want to be angry at this experience. And like, that's that moment where you get to try and grow into a better version of yourself because you put yourself there. You can get yourself out of it, or you could lie your ass down. Like, what matters in a sub 6 day finish other than ego, right? It's just it's a number, like a placing. And that low moment I had to sit in for hours hours of pushing my bike out of Junction Creek, because at that point I could ride, and I was like, I don't even want to. I'm gonna walk and protest for how shitty I feel. and then it seemed like years, and then it was over. And I remember coming into the end, it was a few minutes before 4, and I was probably like 0.75 miles away. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to pedal really hard. Fuck 6 days, And that was like a space that now I have to sit and think about and take into future races of like getting pushed to that level of like the thing or the thing I don't want to be, which is the person who's like, fuck it, I don't even care anymore. So that was like a super low from this race that now I get to go do better with in the future and still have this sub 6 goal that I'm like a few minutes off of for some reason. And remember to value like those 6 days of my life, not the few minutes miss that I see at the end.
Yeah.
Like what actually matters.
Right.
But that was the emotional crack. Like I might have felt like a bag of poop on Cataract, but I like lost a piece of myself in Junction Creek or gained a piece of myself.
Yeah.
Or both. So,
dang.
Yeah.
And you like, you're just good? You're just solid the whole time?
No, well, this one was different.
Come on,
bro. I've had...
You seem pretty solid.
This one was solid. That was like a characteristic of it for me. But I've had those lows, like they've been core parts of pretty much every other race. So rather than that though, in this one, the thing that I would say, like what the lesson or whatever in this one. I really wanted the single speed crown, and Steven wanted it too. Like, we didn't get to talk about it. We were together a lot on day 2. We weren't like riding together, but we passed each other probably a dozen times and had little conversations each time. And I was like, oh, this guy's rad. Like, and he's a really strong rider, and this is going to be a good race. And we, at that point, Johnny Price is still close by and everything, and is not really sure how all that's going to shake out. But thinking like, how am I going to get away from Steven at some point in the race? And just with our sleep schedules, I ended up getting a couple hours ahead on day 3 just by virtue of the fact that I slept a little less and then was out there. But each day forth from there, he would like eat into that. And by the time I went through Silverton, he came through Silverton a lot quicker than I did, and was suddenly like, an hour and a half behind, which is not a lot. That's like an upset tummy away, or that's a bad climb away. And then something like the CTR, and then climbing up Rolling Pass, I felt terrible. This is the middle of the afternoon. I'd eaten a lot in Silverton. Like, I was calorie banked, but I felt hot. I don't like feeling hot. And I just like cratered my way up over Rolling Pass. And I only checked or saw a few times, but each time Steven's a little closer. And I'm like, man, he's going to dog me down overnight. How am I going to stay overnight? So like, I just to simplify it, we raced, Steven and I left Silverton at 4:30 in the afternoon. We'd been riding, both of us, since the wee hours that morning before. And then it was a drag race through the dark to the end, a little bit of light. I got the Black Hawk at sunset, dark the whole rest of the way, and not knowing really where Steven was. And so it was like this headspace of, the growth that came out of that was like not giving up. It would have been so easy to like say, oh, he can have it. I'll just go to sleep for an hour. Like, that would have been way more comfortable. It hurt, like trying to stay awake and move fast with someone chasing you that you think in your head is faster because they have been faster the last few days. It hurt. Like, it's like there are a lot of times I just wanted to give up and like, and I did at one point lay down and let myself take a 20-minute nap, and he got really close. But I think I think going forward, it made me a stronger racer, stronger human to have like just pushed through that in the same ways that anybody pushes through any other challenges out there. Not necessarily racing anybody, but like pushing through the dark on something, or pushing through a storm or whatever. So that was my chance to grow this time. That was my chance to crack. It was racing somebody, which I've never really had that, even though all these are races. I've never really had something to like fight for, I guess, like a thing, a placement or whatever. And again, like, that's not generally why I'm out here, but this time it was, in the end, the single speed thing. So, I don't know. This is a different one for me. Usually they're like I'm surrounded by lots of people. I didn't see hardly anybody out there after the first 2 days. And so this one like just took on a different character. Like, what can I get out of this one? Turned into a race.
It's pretty interesting how many people you do see in these. Mm-hmm. You think you're going to be extremely remote, but there's a lot of people. There's a lot of through hikers,
right?
Which was kind of nice. You'd see you always feel like you weren't too far away from somebody,
right?
I fell down a scree field thingy, tipped over the wrong way. Over the bike. Mom, don't listen to this part. And I was approaching a hiker, and I was kind of distracted, and it was in the cataract section, I guess. Is this am I saying that right?
There's a cataract section. Yeah.
Well, the big Alpine section.
Yeah.
It was like in the middle of the big Alpine section.
Yeah, you're probably into if you've come over the summit, you were into cataract at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So it was up in that area, and I came up on this hiker, kind of got distracted for a second, and then all of a sudden I was falling on the wrong side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And like fell over and started sliding down. And the hiker turned around and saw me and was like running back to help me because I was kind of like trying to just stop from sliding all the way down, you know?
Yeah.
Fortunately, it was not too steep right there.
Oh.
So I was able to, but that was it for the crash. I was able to like get myself stopped from sliding, get my bike like walked back up.
Yeah.
The hiker grabbed the bike.
My gosh.
And I tried to get back up on the trail, and it freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was really the only like bad potential crash.
Oh man.
But it freaked me out for a second, and it freaked the girl out too. The hiker girl. But it started to make me think like, what happens if something really bad happens out here? You know, there's people. There were a lot of people.
Yeah.
True.
You know, so I didn't feel too. I don't know. Arizona sometimes feels a lot more remote.
It does.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in my head, this area should be more remote, but there's just so many thru hikers that it's not that remote.
Yeah, the season that we race it in is very popular.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So any mechanicals for either of you?
What? Now I'm trying to even think on.
You had your brakes.
Oh yeah. I had a lovely friend in my life pro deal a set of brakes for me and put them on this new bike build. And I think I make this assumption that the only brakes anyone uses are metallic pads.
Yeah.
Regardless of like what type of brake you're using, you're using something that wears slowly.
Right.
So I had organic pads starting this race, and by the time I got into Sergeant's Mesa, I had metal on metal. But Sergeant's Mesa was full of hail and dirty and muddy. And the noise that I was listening to over the music that I was listening to with my earbuds, I was like, it's grit. There's just grit on my brakes as I scored through my rotor again and again and again. And then finally shifted that out only to have this like warped, scored, like still able to brake, but just this horrible, almost didn't want to touch your brakes noise that would stay with me for the rest of the ride.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why I did this time-wise, but I was like, I'll just wait till the front ones blow up and then switch them too. So then I spent a day riding with like a rear brake and basically no front brake until getting to the top of Stony Pass and finally addressing the situation, which is always good learning for like, just fix shit.
Yeah.
Just fix it right away. It's just a better thing. And then even coming down out of Kennebec, I was like, fucking hope the rear brake keeps working. Yeah. Seems like it is. Sounds like shit. But that was an interesting, kind of like very light mechanical, but a good lesson in, keep your bike tight, even if there's new parts on it.
Yeah, this seemed like it seems like mandatory to do like 4-piston brakes.
100%.
Yeah.
There was so much braking.
Yeah.
And metallic pads and like really work on your positioning so your hands aren't getting thrashed by all the braking and steep terrain.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Like, what are some tips on that? I was trying to move hand positioning to help.
I mean, I think I'm a total weirdo, so I don't know if I'm the person. Like, I got these big mitts, like these man hands.
Yeah.
And I love braking with my hands almost fully open. So for me, it's about like as high pressure in my lines as I can get and my levers as far out as they'll go. And it's just like, then I have so much throw distance that it feels like my tendons and ligaments don't get tired. Whereas a lot of people I know like to kind of keep their hands more closed. I want my hands like sloper open grip for rock climbing almost. And that leads to like no fatigue and feeling like I have tons of power. But I think that's bizarre. And I float my levers. Both my levers, like I could just tap and they move.
Really?
So they shift into the most ergonomic position while I'm riding. And everyone I talk to is like, you're a weirdo. So I don't know if that works, but it leads to no hand discomfort.
And you don't feel like you're out of control on the handlebars, like as I like death gripping. You don't feel like you.
No, I'm like light
you're
gripping.
Pretty soft on.
Yeah, super soft.
And you don't feel like that ever bumps your hand off the handlebar or could lead to a crash or something?
Well, that was happening a bit, but not for that reason. I'd sprained my thumb, like I think almost torn this ligament about a month ago. And so I was riding all my downhills with my hand like that, like my thumb above, not around the bar. That definitely leads to flying over the bars.
Right.
But normally soft gripping floating levers feels pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't recommend just like pawing your handlebars.
Yeah.
I've got a nice bruise on my leg from a good OTV moment where I bounced a rock and my right hand it was already like pre-Superman position. So then it just went for it. You already heard this. How about you?
I didn't have any mechanicals. Not, it was a lucky run that way. But I had a few and none of them were consequential. It ended up, but I had a few near misses with rocks and things at really high speed, where in the microsecond after I saw the rock hiding under the bush hanging out, I moved my wheel just enough to miss it, or I threw a hip out to the right to miss the rock so the pedal wouldn't strike on the left. That would have sent me careening down a cliff or whatever. There were 5 of those in the race, and 3 of them were in the last 10 miles. And yeah, but it was clean. I got through it. You just, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. Didn't have mechanicals, was lucky with that. Yeah, it was kind of a gifted run. So
yeah, seemed that way.
Yeah.
So have you guys thought about, or do you have any other plans for the rest of the year for events or?
It's AZT 800 season.
Is it?
Apparently
it started 2 days ago, buddy. As soon as at the finish line of the CTR, that's when AZT season starts.
Yeah. Already texting with John Schilling to be like, see you this fall.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's the 2/3 Triple Crown each year is a really enjoyable way to live, this CTR into the AZTR.
Yeah. And neither of you have any desire to do Tour Divide? Or
next year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Triple Crown.
Friend Pack 2025 Triple Crown.
Damn.
Yeah.
And then John Phelps should be a part of that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Tour Divide, I think he's in for, but we're trying to convince him on the others.
Yeah.
So he's a buddy. John.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know John well. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done Pinions a few times, and yeah.
So the 3 of us met. Johnny on my first CTR, Karin second. We met 2 years ago. So, yeah. CTR.
Cool. Do you think that, what do you think you can do differently on the Arizona Trail race this year?
So much unfinished business.
Okay.
Both of us. You want to start?
Not having COVID spark at the Mexican border.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really
No, I think a ton of it is considering your strategy and approach to the AZTR. At least for me, I struggle a ton with the cold, maybe less so with the heat, and this almost need for a kit change out partway through, I think is really important. And I had come in last year with this belief of everything I start with, I finish with. There are no changes, which is silly because in the rules you can ship yourself a backpack.
Right.
And so once we were in the single digit Fahrenheit temps in pretty much north of Payson onwards, once we climbed the Mogollon Rim onwards, I was just dying. I was going into store Walmarts and buying child's blankets and cutting the chunk that I wanted that I thought could add to my sleeping bag and become a superhero cape when it was cold at night. And was just sort of dying slowly in the cold, too cold to sleep a lot of the time. And then had this very anemic 28-liter pack, which I guess is what a lot of people do. But the weight and my physique carrying the bike across the Grand Canyon was just getting crushed. And I'd bought an automotive kneeling pad and was trying to pad out the back of my pelvis with it to make it across the Sufferfest. And now going into the AZT, I would just ship myself stuff to pace in or flag, kind of depending on the weather, and just be able to be reasonably warm enough to sleep at night and have enough of a pack to carry a bike across the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
And I think that would just completely change how the whole second half of the run would look. Because I remember actually lying down and being like, this is how homeless people die on the street. Like, I am too cold to sleep, and I'm going downhill unless I get my ass back up and just suffer until the sun rises. And that's a scary space to be in, where you're like, what if my bike breaks and I can't keep moving? Like, how do I stay warm?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the illuminating changes going into the AZT this year are like, stop thinking of it as a heat pit and realize like that time of year, the cold in the desert will kill you just as fast.
Totally.
So
yeah. And Matt, when you were running it or doing the ride last year, and I'd finished the 300, gotten back to flag, and I was gonna find you.
Oh yeah,
up in the Schultz area.
Yeah,
and I rode up there, and it was cold, and I was like,
it was wet. It was like a humid cold that morning.
Like, this is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
totally.
And that wasn't even as cold as it got. I remember. We call it the garmometer, the thermometer within the Garmin.
Yeah.
And I remember going over Mount Eldon that morning, and I think I saw 18 degrees at some point, but it was a special, like, fucked kind of 18 degrees. It was so humid cold. There was like, when you're breathing, you're seeing like the moisture cloud instantly was fogging my glasses. It was that kind of wet cold. But I saw in the North Kaibab, so I climbed out of the canyon at like 10:30 at night, slept in the shitter at the North Rim for a few hours. The wrong one, I know now, like the cold one in the parking lot instead of
because there's like a heated one.
I guess there's something in around the visitor center. I don't know if you're supposed to or not, but anyway, I went in the cold. It was fine. I slept fine. I left there. It was in the 20s, and at that point, I'd experienced so much cold that was like, oh, mid-20s. This is great. Like, I'll be fine. And it's like 3 a.m. 2 hours later, I was going down some valley, like up high in the North Kaibab, but going down, and it was a long, like, straightaway, and I'm on a single speed, so couldn't pedal really, or pedaling wasn't doing anything. And I literally watched the garmometer temperature drop below 10, 9, 8, 7. It bottomed out at 2 degrees, and I didn't have anything to do. Like, it was just too cold to stop. So keep rolling, but rolling was still downhill, not pedaling because single speed. And so the next 2 hours, fortunately, finally got to a hill, and I like literally ran up the hill as fast as I could, just trying to generate heat, and then down again. Repeated that for 2 hours. And I remember I wasn't sleepy from sleep deprivation, but I got sleepy from the cold. It's the one time I feel like cold is like almost like put me to sleep. And I remember there's a big escarpment up there you come to eventually where you're looking out. You can kind of see the whole plateau. You can see off to the canyon. There's like picnic tables and something. I don't know what the area is called, but right then our mutual friend Dane Arntz texted me, and he said, "You're in one of my favorite places on earth." And I was like, "This is what I fucking hate this place, Dane." And then that was it. That was a little text thing, but the sun came up like right as this was happening, and I just stood there and let it hit me, and was able to eat and drink and like clean the melting frost off my beard. And I remember I sent this one a video from there, just telling her how messed up it was. But yeah, it's cold, but the cold wasn't like in terms of next year, this fall, and like what I want to do, the heat really defeated me last fall down south. I had a horrible time with it. And I mean, there were a number of times I felt really unhealthy in it, like sitting under a tree, heart rate pounding, respiration, like really ramped up, and having no other way to cool off, like zero, and thinking, man, I could like die here. And so this year I'm going to try to be better acclimated for that. And maybe it won't be so hot. We had record heat down south last year for that time of year. So maybe it won't be that hot and maybe it won't be a big deal. But my plan going into it this year and how to try to do better at that this year is going to be around heat acclimatization.
And you haven't, are there any like specifics?
Well, it's hard. So I live in the Colorado mountains. We both do, different places, but so it's hard like in September, October to get hot, like outside.
Yeah.
You're like more cold. But gonna spend the week ahead of the race down in Arizona riding probably daytime heat stuff. I don't know how much faith to put in this, but I bought this $300 sauna off of Amazon.
Yeah,
and
sweet.
I'm going to follow.
You'll die in that for sure.
Oh man, yeah,
Don't worry about it.
If it doesn't. Yeah,
that thing will cook you alive, dude. Don't worry about the Arizona Trail with doing it.
Turkey baster. But I found this plan online, like these Badwater runners use to train for the Death Valley race, and they use saunas. Some of them.
So Jess used Jess had a training full coach for Cocodona, the 250-mile running race, full coach, full training plan, and he had her doing heat training in the bathtub.
Oh,
so simulating a sauna. So she would go for a run and then come back and do a certain temperature. She would have to get it to a certain temperature and then sit in it for a certain amount of time.
Wow.
And she really thinks it helped her significantly for Cocodona. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm gonna try. Yeah.
So do you do you lay down in it? Is it like this sort of sauna?
No, it's like, it's really pretty cheap. It's like it's a black box, like fabric that's insulated, this tubing structure that's really easy to put up and take down. And then it has these like infrared heating pads inside, and it goes up to like 140 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And, and then you just like sit in there. Little chair.
And sweat.
Little camp chair. Sweat.
And send your friends videos of it.
Yeah.
I remember going up Reddington Road on the Arizona Trail when I was doing the 300 and you two were doing the 8. I was maybe half a day or a day ahead of you.
It was hot.
And it was so hot.
Yeah.
And I was having my moments. That was probably my worst moments. It was just like hot pavement.
Yeah.
And
crazy hot.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, for me, I was like, let's just hang out in the shade for a few hours, wait for the sun to go down.
Yeah.
Don't push.
Yeah.
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 Once that sun goes, and it worked good, really well. And also did it for Pinions this year too, coming out of Fossil Creek.
Yeah.
Because it got really hot. Like it rivaled that Reddington climb for sure, as far as length and heat and dust and cars and just nastiness,
Yeah.
And so it was just like, just go chill out in a bush. There's a value to a siesta,
Right.
Like,
100%.
and cool out, like pour some water over your head and watch all the other people suffer for a minute. And then you're going to catch up with them when you're fresher because you just rested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been really trying to learn the wisdom and the patience for that.
Right.
Yeah. Good race strategy. Because that day that you were probably climbing Reddington while I was crossing like the low lands of Tucson.
Okay.
At that point, like the super cooker.
Right. Fossil, the cave. Colossal Cave.
Yeah, Colossal Cave. Kind of like everything from when you descend out of Las Colinas to the Colossal Cave. And I remember crossing under Highway 10. It was like noon, and there were like 8 carcasses in there. Bike pack racers, all of them. Because I go under those tunnels and I'm like, oh God, snakes. There's probably snakes in here. And it was just people dying. And good spot to do it. But I think we all feel that pressure. Like it's day 2. It's really hard to use your executive function on day 2 because there's people around and you're like, I just want to move with all the racers.
Yeah.
But and I think I'm wired a little differently for heat, but so the collective, the people I was riding with that day, like just got thrashed. And I was living in this strange mental space where I had a really horrible fever. And I was like, oh, it's the same temperature inside me as it is outside me, because it was like 102 on every like thing that you could read temperature off of. But that's not a reason to keep going through that. And you're totally right. As soon as the long shadows hit, that, it was quite pleasant.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because then after that, I went up Molino Basin. After Reddington in the heat of the day, finally made it to Molino Basin, and that was like pleasant.
Totally.
That was a pleasant hike-a-bike.
Yeah.
That year, which was different, from the previous year, the previous time I did it. So yeah, well, I think that. So you're okay with heat? You said earlier, right?
I think that the lizards are my people.
Okay.
Yeah. I more so than the cold.
Yeah.
I get kind of shattered when it gets
So you two are
really
kind of
cold.
opposite in that
Yeah.
way, huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Matt, I think your strategy will work quite well.
I'm going to try. Yeah. And then if I try, the other thing that could happen, like very likely, I'll put a ton of effort into that, and then it'll be a pleasant 85 degrees.
Yeah.
So I'd accept that.
Right. So any strategies for the cold then?
I think just like remembering to ship the weight in later. Like I had ended up basically like mainlining junk food and fritters at the end for the calories. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and start eating. I think I lost like 10 pounds I didn't have to lose on the Arizona Trail, and a lot of it was the cold. And then going into like Flagstaff REI and like buying a sleeping bag liner and just acquiring more things.
Right.
But that was like, when you're already on the back end of the suffering, like it's hard to get yourself back. Had I shipped the appropriate kit to somewhere like Payson and not frozen for a couple of days, getting into the even colder places, I think I would have just been less on the back foot. Like there was definitely like a point in every day where you knew the darkness was coming, and I was like, I don't know if I have what it takes to get through another night of this. And then you're sort of in the no man's land of like, there's not really hotels. They lock the restrooms on November 1st. Mm-hmm. Like I had a moment where I was just like wailing on a restroom door, being like, it can't possibly be locked. So it is sort of, I think like the big thing with the AZT is just planning, like thinking about what could happen, and is there anything you can do about it that isn't just reactionary, get into like whatever Walmart and start buying shit. And that's like what I'm coming in with this year, is like more prep for that, and potentially just like eating the weight a little bit and having way more food too, because I was burning hot to stay the right temperature to live.
So I had this is the first time after this CTR, this is the first time I've ever had sores in my mouth this bad.
Oh yeah,
it's never happened before, and I don't know if it was a time thing, because this is the longest I've ever been out bikepacking. Do either of you get that? And how do you manage that?
So I call them sugar sores. They're from a combination of things, and it's like it's mouth breathing, number one, which dries your mouth out, and you're not like swapping saliva, and which is kind of cleaning your mouth all day. That's a big thing. You're eating whatever you're eating probably got sugar in it or salt, which are just like living and staying on your tongue or your elsewhere in your mouth. And then like if you're going 16 plus hours a day for that many days in a row, like it's really bad for your dental health in general. So all those things add up to sores for a lot of people. And race cough is just like a similar
definitely
thing, kind of comes from the same place almost. So yeah, I didn't do a great job of it this time, but usually I try to brush my teeth and tongue, mouth, like not just teeth, like everything in there. Try to clean it at least twice a day during these races. And when I do that successfully, it holds it off. This time I was only doing it one a day, and I ended up with a tongue it's getting better today, but the first day after I made the mistake of like eating something with some spice on it, and it's just like your tongue is on fire or whatever. But I don't know are yours a tongue or mouth or
both.
Yeah,
like the sides of the tongue, and then on the inside of the mouth. And I brush my teeth. I try to brush it at least twice a day. But I think it's the mouth breathing. Because it seemed like my nose would stuff up every time I went to bivvy out, and I'd try to lay on my back to try and clear my nose up, but then it would just clog up, and I'd be breathing out my mouth all night, and it was really, really dry. Going into this, I thought, it's gonna be nice. Maybe I won't get a bloody nose because it's not like miserably dry like Arizona Trail.
True, yeah.
But it was quite the opposite. It seemed drier.
We had
like my sinuses were wrecked, totally wrecked.
I bet the relative humidity is pretty close. Like 30s and 40s a lot of the time.
It just seemed, I don't know, and maybe it was the 4th or 5th day started to get really bad.
I mean, you're at altitude, and so your respiration's probably a little higher and stuff too. So it's probably like not your standard riding a bicycle air quality or whatever. So I don't know. I've never finished this race without some kind of upper respiratory distress. I had not like a sick cough, and it's gone this morning for the most part, but the last 2 days I had a pretty good like throaty cough, and then the mouth thing this time. I finished with I didn't even know it had done it, but my left nostril was like a giant blood clot. It never came out. It just like was full of blood.
I shot a lot of bloody snot rockets. For sure.
I just gave in and started Q-tipping my nose.
Okay.
I was like, I can't pick my nose enough to be satisfying, and my fingers are too damn big and they're ripping holes in my nose. And I'm like always traveling with this emergency Q-tip stash, because when you need to shove something in your ear and you can't, it's like it's panic. So my emergency Q-tip stash became my nose Q-tipping stash. I was able to like gently get the shit out a little bit easier, which was mostly like snot and blood. But I think that then you can breathe through your nose more than your mouth. Like I don't have, other than I split my lip, I think from not putting sunscreen on part of my face for most of it. Like the inside of my mouth's fine. Like no like eating sores or breathing sores. But the nose Q-tipping was like off the hook. I should have taken photos of the nose Q-tips.
It's a pro tip.
So you can go ear to nose, but not the other way.
Not nose to ear. I think there's an infection coming if you do that. I only had 4, so I mean they were getting. I probably stuck each one up my nose like 40 times.
Wow.
And at some point you're like, that's fine. It's gonna be good. Your nose is designed to filter some shit out. Anyway,
high value Q-tips right there.
I was putting squirrel's nut butter
into your
anti-chafe, up in my nostrils. Because it was just so dry, and it gave me some temporary relief.
And it's on. Well, and it's, I don't know if you found this. This is where race brain has taken over your mind. I was getting frustrated having to take my glove off to pick my nose because there was a time delay.
Yeah.
And as soon as I switched to Q-tips, it was like time delay solved. Which speaks to what happens to our brains out there.
It was. There was some interesting decision making for all of us out there. But cool. All right, guys. Well, a couple hours in. We're all starting to deteriorate a little bit here. You guys heading home?
Tonight, there's a barbecue, I think, that Krista Russ. Did you meet Krista? She was hanging out here and there for different finishers. Is a Durango resident that's really invested in the race, and she's hosting a barbecue this afternoon, so
sweet.
She's going to go there. Do you know about it?
No. This is news, but we're heading back.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
okay.
We're heading back after this.
Gotcha.
That's fair.
So, my folks were supposed to be at the finish line, and they had a some car troubles, and they were in Sholo, and there was a whole thing going on there, and so they ended up back at our house in Flagstaff.
I see.
So we're heading out of town, so I can see them for a day before I gotta go back to work.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
So, but we were planning to stay through Monday originally, but plans changed.
Gotcha.
So we'll miss the barbecue, but say hi to everybody for me.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
We're not going to do the rapid fire questions this time. We're going to do them when I have you each individually. Okay?
Oh yeah, okay.
Sometime in the future.
Totally.
Rapid fire.
Maybe when you're back in Arizona.
When we can rapid fire, because I don't think I could rapid fire right now.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I'm
like a slow fire.
Right. Everything's going to be on slow fire for the next 3 days. Yeah, I was going to joke around with Jessica and ask her if I could drive home, and scare her. Because it's like Dana described it as the hyperspace tunnel.
Yeah.
When you're driving
after
these things.
Yeah.
None of us should be allowed to operate motor vehicles.
I
realized that Alex and I drove up to see Nicolette and then watch Emma, the third place woman finisher, come in last night.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, who's going to drive? I'm like, oh, I'll drive. And then I started to drive and I was like, I should not be driving us to the trailhead. I'm like, okay, everyone watch what I'm doing. We only have like a couple miles to go.
Oh yeah.
But
it's something else.
Yeah.
Yikes. All right, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
So congratulations again to both of you.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah.
And thanks for taking the time to do this with me today.
It was awesome. Enjoyed it.
Can't wait to see you in Arizona.
Next time I'm sure we see each other, we'll be there, I'm sure.
Cool.
So thanks, friend.
Time.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
I wanted to let you know a few different ways that you can support this podcast. Of course, you can like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Tell other people about it. Tell your friends and family. If you think these conversations I'm having are valuable as I think they are, share it. Send it out. Ask them to subscribe. That would be amazing. That's a free way that you can support. Another way you can support is by financially support is by becoming a member on either YouTube or Spotify. Those links are always in the description of all the videos. And YouTube members do get some extra perks like member shoutouts during the podcast, priority reply to comments, and best of all, you get early access to new videos that I'm releasing. You can also, if you don't want to sign up for a recurring membership, you can also show me your support by sending a one-time gift using what YouTube calls the Super Thanks feature. So when you're watching a video, down at the bottom, there's the little buttons, the thumbs up, thumbs down button. And right next to that, there is a heart with a little dollar sign in the middle, and it says thanks next to it. That is the Super Thanks button. So if you click that, it'll allow you to give a one-time gift, financial gift of your choice. And it's just incredible. Like seeing the support that I've gotten so far from both members and from Super Thanks is just amazing, and it is definitely allowing me to keep this thing rolling down the tracks.